The galaxy had fought wars for thousands of years. But no one expected the war that was coming. Entire star systems were falling. Fleets were disappearing. And the enemy was unstoppable. Civilizations that once ruled the stars were now afraid. Because for the first time in history, the galaxy was losing, badly. But then something strange started appearing in battle reports. Not a new weapon. Not a secret technology. A species. Humans. At first, no one took them seriously. They were new to space. Their fleets were small. Their technology was average. But something impossible started happening. Every battle where humans appeared, the losing side survived. Commanders noticed it. Soldiers started talking about it. And soon, the entire galaxy began asking the same question. What was so special about humans? Then one battle changed everything. A trapped fleet. Thousands of enemy ships. No escape. No hope. And right when everyone believed it was over, a small human fleet arrived. What they did next shocked the entire galaxy. Because from that day forward, alien soldiers began saying something no one had ever said before. The greatest honor in war was standing beside a human. But the real story is even more unbelievable. The war did not start with a loud explosion. It started with silence. Deep space had always been calm near the outer systems. Traders moved slowly between stars. Patrol ships watched the borders. Life was normal across the galaxy. Then one day, the signals stopped. First, a mining colony went dark. No warning, no message, just silence. At first, the Galactic observers thought it was a system failure. It had happened before. Small problems were common in space. But then another system went quiet. And another. Within days, fear began to spread. Something was coming. And no one knew what it was. Far away, beyond the known star maps, a massive fleet moved through the darkness. Thousands of ships. Cold. Organized. Powerful. They did not send messages. They did not negotiate. They only advanced. When the first battle happened, it was over quickly. Too quickly. The defending fleet never stood a chance. Their weapons were strong, their pilots were skilled, but the enemy was something different. Precise. Relentless. Unstoppable. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. A new empire had entered the war. And they were winning. Civilizations that had existed for thousands of years began to fall in weeks. Some tried to fight. Others surrendered. But even surrender did not always save them. Planets burned. Stations were destroyed. Entire fleets disappeared. Fear began to control every decision. Leaders held emergency meetings. Scientists searched for answers. Military commanders tried to understand the enemy. But the truth was simple. The galaxy was losing. Badly. During these dark days, many species remembered an old rule of survival. When a war cannot be won, you run. Some governments moved their people to hidden worlds. Others abandoned outer systems and pulled their fleets back. Hope was fading. Then something strange started appearing in battle reports. At first, it looked like a mistake. A small note at the end of combat logs. Observers kept seeing the same word. Humans. Humans were new to the galaxy. Very new. They had only joined the larger interstellar community not long ago. Many species did not know much about them. Some thought humans were curious. Some thought they were reckless. Others simply ignored them. Compared to older civilizations, humans were still learning. Their ships were not the biggest. Their technology was not the most advanced. Their military was small. So when commanders saw the name Human Fleet in the battle records, they did not take it seriously. First. But the reports kept coming. One battle after another. And something strange was happening. Whenever humans appeared in a battle, the result changed. A fleet that should have been destroyed managed to escape. A station that should have fallen survived longer than expected. A retreat that should have turned into disaster somehow succeeded. It did not make sense. The humans were not winning the battles alone, but they were changing them. One alien commander studied the reports carefully. He noticed a pattern. In battles without humans, fleets were wiped out quickly. In battles where humans were present, something different happened. Ships protected each other more. Pilots took risks to save allies. Formations stayed strong longer. Morale improved. Even in the middle of chaos, it was as if the battlefield itself changed when humans arrived. And that was impossible, or so they thought. Soon, rumors began spreading among soldiers. Stories moved faster than official reports. Some said human pilots refused to retreat until every Allied ship was safe. Others said human soldiers fought even when their ships were damaged. There were even stories of humans flying directly into enemy fire just to give others time to escape. Many did not believe these stories. They sounded like legends, but the reports kept proving them true. Then came a battle that changed everything. A large coalition fleet was trapped near a broken star system. Enemy forces surrounded them. Escape was impossible. Commanders believed it would be the end. Some ships began preparing final messages to their home worlds. Others shut down systems to save energy for one last fight. Fear filled every channel. Then a new signal appeared on the communication network. An unknown fleet had entered the system. At first, everyone thought it was the enemy, but the signal was different. Simple, direct, human. The human fleet was not large. In fact, compared to the enemy, it was very small. Too small. Many commanders thought they would turn back once they saw the situation. But they did not. Instead, the human ships moved forward, straight toward the battlefield. No hesitation, no fear, just action. The alien commanders watched in shock. Why would they do that? Why would such a small fleet enter a battle that was already lost? The answer came moments later. A message from the human fleet appeared on every screen. It was short, clear, and calm. We are here. Hold the line. Something changed at that moment. No one could explain it, but the fear that had filled the fleet began to fade. Ships that were preparing to surrender restarted their engines. Pilots that had lost hope picked up their controls again. Defenses came back online, because somehow, if humans were still willing to fight, maybe the battle was not over. The enemy fleet began its attack. The battle was massive. Explosions filled space. Ships were damaged. Fighters moved in every direction. And right in the middle of the chaos, the human fleet stayed together. They protected weaker ships. They blocked enemy attacks. They created escape paths for trapped allies. Again and again, even when it was dangerous, even when it seemed impossible. For the first time since the war began, the enemy advance slowed. Just a little. But it was enough. Enough for ships to escape. Enough for the fleet to survive. Enough to create something the galaxy had almost forgotten. Hope. After that battle, a new question spread across the stars. It was not about the enemy. Not anymore. It was about humans. Who were they really? And why did every battle change? When they were there, the galaxy was about to learn something important. Something that would change the meaning of war forever. After the strange battle near the broken star system, the news spread quickly across space. Not just the battle, but the humans. Commanders from many worlds began sending reports to the Central Council of the Galaxy, known as the Galactic Coalition. Every report said almost the same thing. Humans changed battles. Not because they were the strongest, but because they fought differently. Still, many leaders were not convinced. Some believed the reports were exaggerated. Others thought it was only luck. And a few believed humans were simply reckless. In war, reckless actions often ended badly. So the coalition decided to do something important. They called an emergency meeting. The meeting took place on a massive space station in the center of the coalition territory. Ships from dozens of species arrived. Huge warships, scientific vessels, diplomatic transports. Inside the station, leaders gathered in a large circular hall. The atmosphere was tense. Everyone knew the situation was getting worse. More systems were falling to the enemy every week. The Karth War fleets were moving closer to the inner systems, and no one had a real plan to stop them. Many leaders spoke during the meeting. Some were angry. Some were afraid. Some had already lost their home worlds. One commander stood and spoke loudly. "We cannot win this war," he said. "Our fleets are smaller. Our defenses are failing. We must negotiate or retreat." Several leaders agreed with him, but others disagreed. A different leader stood up. "We have been retreating since the war began," she said. "And every time we retreat, the enemy grows stronger." The hall filled with arguments. Voices echoed across the chamber. No one could agree on a solution until one new topic appeared. Humans. First, the room became quiet. Then the questions began. Can we trust them? Are they strong enough to help? Why are they risking their fleets in lost battles? Some leaders were curious. Others were suspicious. Humans were still a mystery to most species. They had entered the galactic community quickly, and many civilizations had not fully understood them yet. Their culture was unusual. Their decisions were often emotional, and sometimes unpredictable. That made many alien leaders uncomfortable. Then something unexpected happened. The doors of the hall opened. A human delegation had arrived. They had been invited to the meeting, but many leaders had not expected them to actually come. At the front of the group was a human general. He walked calmly into the hall. Not nervous, not arrogant, just calm. Many alien leaders watched him carefully. They were trying to understand him, trying to understand humans. The council allowed the human general to speak. He looked around the hall for a moment. He saw fear. He saw anger. He saw exhaustion. The galaxy had been fighting for survival for too long. Then he began speaking. His voice was steady, simple, clear. "We know you do not fully trust us," he said. "That is understandable." Some leaders exchanged looks. They did not expect such honesty. The human continued. "Humans are not the strongest species in the galaxy. We know that. Our ships are not the biggest. Our weapons are not the most powerful. But we have something else." The hall became silent again. Everyone was listening. The human general looked around the room. "We do not abandon our allies," he said. "That is how humans fight. No dramatic speech. No promises of victory. Just that one statement." At first, some leaders were confused. That was all? But others began to understand. Because many battle reports had already shown this. Humans stayed when others retreated. Humans protected weaker fleets. Humans returned to rescue damaged ships. They did not leave, even in dangerous situations. One alien commander asked an important question. "If we fight beside humans, what will you expect from us?" The human general answered immediately. "The same thing." The room became quiet again, because everyone understood what that meant. Trust, real trust, not temporary alliances, not strategic cooperation, but standing together, even when the situation looked impossible. That kind of alliance was rare in the galaxy. Many species were used to protecting only their own people, but humans seemed different. The meeting continued for hours. Debates, concerns, arguments. Some leaders still refused the idea. They believed humans were too unpredictable. They feared human decisions might make situations worse. But others remembered the recent battles. They remembered the fleets that survived only because humans arrived. Slowly, opinions began to change. Not completely, but enough. Enough to try something new. Finally, the coalition made a decision. It was not a perfect agreement, but it was a start. They would allow humans to join coalition operations, mixed fleets, shared battle strategies, joint missions. It would be the first true alliance between humans and many alien civilizations. No one knew if it would work. Some believed it might fail. Others believed it was their last chance. After the meeting ended, fleets began reorganizing. Human ships started joining alien formations. Different species began training together. Communication systems were adjusted. Battle plans were updated. Felt strange at first. Very strange. Some pilots did not trust the humans yet. Some humans did not fully understand alien tactics. But slowly they began learning from each other. And something interesting started happening. Morale improved. Just a little, but enough to notice. Then the enemy appeared again. A large Karth war fleet was approaching a critical star system. If that system fell, the enemy would gain a direct path to several major worlds. The coalition had to stop them. But this time, the fleet would be different. For the first time in the war, humans and aliens would fight together. Not just in the same battle, but as one force. And no one in the galaxy knew yet that this battle would change how soldiers across the stars viewed humans forever. The warning arrived earlier than expected. Enemy fleet detected. The message spread quickly across the coalition command network of the Galactic Coalition. A large Karth battle force was moving toward the star system known as Archon Reach. Archon Reach was important. Very important. It was a gateway system. If the enemy captured it, they would have a clear path to several major coalition worlds. Billions of lives were at risk. And this time, retreat was not an option. The coalition fleet gathered near the system's defense line. Ships from many species formed a massive formation. Some ships were huge carriers. Some were fast attack vessels. Others were support ships. And among them were human ships. Not many, but enough to notice. For many alien pilots, this was their first time fighting beside humans. Some were curious. Some were unsure. Some were nervous. They had heard the stories. But stories were different from reality. Soon they would find out the truth. Inside the command center of the coalition flagship, officers watched the tactical display. Enemy ships appeared one by one on the screen. Then dozens. Then hundreds. Finally, thousands. The Karth fleet was massive. Much larger than expected. Silence filled the command room. Everyone understood the situation. This battle would decide the fate of the system. Maybe more. The coalition commander gave the order to prepare for combat. Weapons systems activated. Shields powered up. Fighter squadrons launched from carriers. Across the fleet, tension grew. But something interesting was happening. The human ships were already moving. Not waiting. Not hesitating. They adjusted their positions across the formation. Some moved closer to weaker ships. Others moved toward the front lines. It looked almost like they were protecting the formation. Alien commanders noticed this. But they did not stop them. They were curious to see what humans would do. Then the battle began. The Karth fleet attacked first. Their weapons fired across the darkness of space. Bright flashes of energy moved between the fleets. Explosions lit up the battlefield. Several coalition ships were hit immediately. Damage reports started coming in quickly. Shields failing. Hull damage. Engines offline. The first minutes of the battle were chaotic. Just like many battles earlier in the war. But then something changed. A coalition cruiser from a smaller alien species was hit badly. Its engines stopped working. It began drifting toward enemy lines. Normally, ships in that situation were lost. No one could help them in time. But this time, a human destroyer changed course. Without waiting for permission, the human ship moved directly between the damaged cruiser and the enemy fire. The shields absorbed the attack. Then it deployed support drones. Within minutes, the damaged cruiser was being pulled away from danger. Alien officers watching the battle were surprised. That kind of action was rare, very rare, but it was not the only one. Across the battlefield, more similar events began happening. A human fighter squadron helped escort alien bombers through heavy fire. A human medical ship moved closer to the front line to assist injured pilots. Another human vessel stayed behind a retreating group of ships to block enemy attacks. Again and again, small actions, but important ones. And slowly, alien pilots began noticing something. They were fighting differently now, with more confidence, because someone was watching their back. One alien pilot from a distant world noticed it clearly. Earlier in the war, battles often turned into chaos quickly. Ships would retreat individually. Formations would break apart. Fear spread fast. But now, ships were staying together longer. Pilots were communicating more. Coordination improved. It was not perfect, but it was better, much better. And strangely, human ships were often in the center of that coordination. The Karth fleet noticed the change too. Their attacks became more aggressive. They pushed forward harder, trying to break the coalition formation. Several heavy enemy ships targeted the human vessels directly. Perhaps they realized humans were becoming a problem. One large Karth battleship focused fire on a human cruiser. The human ship's shields dropped quickly. Damage alarms sounded. Many observers thought the ship would retreat, but it did not. Instead, something surprising happened. Nearby alien ships moved closer, protecting the human cruiser, returning the favor. For the first time, alien commanders saw something new on the battlefield. Trust, not planned, not ordered, but real. Ships from different species defending each other naturally, working together, fighting together, and the formation held, even under heavy attack. Hours passed during the battle. Explosions filled space. Ships were lost on both sides, but the coalition fleet was still there, still fighting, still holding the line. And something else was happening. The enemy advance had slowed, just like in the earlier battle when humans first appeared. The difference was clear now. This was not luck. This was a pattern. Then an opportunity appeared. Coalition scanners detected a weak point in the enemy formation, a narrow opening between two Karth battle groups. If the coalition could push through that gap, they could force the enemy to fall back. But it was risky, very risky. The attack would face heavy fire. The coalition commander hesitated. Then a message came from the human fleet leader. We will lead the push. No long explanation, just action. Moments later, human ships accelerated toward the opening. Alien ships followed. Not because they were ordered, but because they wanted to. The attack was intense. Enemy weapons fired from every direction. Several ships took heavy damage, but the formation stayed strong. Step by step, they moved forward. And finally, they broke through the enemy line. The Karth formation began to lose structure. Their ships had to reposition. Their attack slowed even more. For the first time in this war, the enemy was being pushed back. When the battle finally ended, the Karth fleet retreated. Not completely defeated, but forced to withdraw. Archon Reach was safe. For now. Across the coalition fleet, communication channels filled with messages. Relief, surprise, respect. Because many commanders had realized something important. Humans did not just fight battles. They changed them. And this was only the beginning. After the victory at Archon Reach, something changed across the fleets of the Galactic Coalition. not just in strategy, but in how soldiers felt during battle. Before this, many coalition pilots fought because they had to, because their worlds were in danger, because retreat was no longer possible. But now, something new was spreading through the fleets. Confidence. Not loud confidence. Not arrogance. Just a quiet belief. If humans were there, things might be different. In the days after the battle, commanders studied the combat recordings. They wanted to understand exactly what had happened. At first, they expected to find some advanced tactic or secret technology. But that was not what they found. The truth was simpler. Humans worked to keep everyone alive. Again and again, the recordings showed the same behavior. Human pilots stayed longer in dangerous zones. Human ships moved to protect damaged allies. Human commanders shared information quickly with other fleets. It was not about being stronger. It was about refusing to leave others behind. Many alien species had never fought wars like this before. In past conflicts, survival often meant protecting your own forces first. Every species had its own priorities. But humans seemed to think differently. They fought like the entire fleet mattered, not just their own ships. And that small difference began to change the battlefield. Training exercises began soon after the battle. Mixed fleets started practicing together. Human officers worked closely with alien commanders. At first, communication was difficult. Different species had different combat styles. Some preferred strict formations. Others used fast attack patterns. Some relied heavily on automated systems. Humans, however, adapted quickly. They observed. They learned. And they adjusted their tactics to fit the others. This surprised many coalition leaders. Most species took a long time to change their strategies. But humans seemed comfortable learning during the process. During one exercise, an alien squadron accidentally drifted too far from the formation. In earlier wars, that mistake could have ended badly. But a human patrol group immediately noticed. They moved closer and helped guide the squadron back into position. No criticism. No complaints. Just help. Moments like this began to build trust. Slowly, but steadily. Meanwhile, the enemy continued its advance across other regions. The Karth war fleets were still powerful, still dangerous, still determined to conquer the galaxy. But reports from recent battles showed something new. Coalition fleets were lasting longer. Retreats were more organized. Losses were slightly lower. Not a huge difference, but enough to notice. Enemy commanders began analyzing these changes carefully. They wanted to understand why their victories were slowing down. And once again, the answer appeared in the reports. Humans. Across the galaxy, soldiers started sharing stories. Not official reports. Real stories from the battlefield. One pilot told the story of a human fighter that stayed behind to guide lost ships through an asteroid field. Another told of a human engineer who helped repair alien technology during a battle. There was even a story about a human medic who treated injured soldiers from 3 different species at the same time. Some stories sounded unbelievable, but more and more witnesses confirmed them. And soon, the stories reached planets far from the war zones. People began hearing about humans in a different way, not as a new species, but as reliable allies. Inside Coalition Command, leaders began discussing something interesting. Morale levels. For the first time since the war started, morale was rising. Soldiers were more willing to take defensive positions. Pilots were more confident during difficult missions. Commanders noticed that mixed fleets performed better than expected. And the common factor in many of those fleets was human presence. It was not just strategy. It was something deeper. Humans seemed to affect how others fought. One alien strategist tried to explain it during a briefing. He studied battle psychology. After reviewing hundreds of combat recordings, he made a simple conclusion. When soldiers believe someone will stand with them, he said, they fight longer. That idea spread quickly through the command centers, because it matched what many had already seen. Humans were not just helping physically. They were changing how soldiers felt about the battle. Fear was still there. War was still dangerous, but it no longer felt hopeless. Soon, another important mission appeared. A remote system on the edge of coalition territory had sent a distress signal. Enemy forces were moving toward it quickly. The system did not have strong defenses. If help did not arrive soon, the planet would fall. A rescue fleet had to be sent immediately. But there was a problem. The nearest available fleet was small. Too small to face a full enemy force. Coalition leaders debated what to do. Sending the fleet could be risky, but abandoning the system would mean losing millions of lives. The decision was difficult. Then a human commander made a suggestion. We send the fleet, he said, and we stay until the civilians are safe. Some leaders hesitated. The risk was real, but something had changed inside the coalition. They were beginning to think differently now. Instead of asking, can we win this battle? They were starting to ask, can we protect each other? That small change in thinking came mostly from watching humans fight. After a long discussion, the coalition approved the mission. The rescue fleet would move immediately. Human ships would join the operation. Alien ships would support them. Another mixed fleet. Another test of trust. As the fleet prepared to depart, soldiers across the ships felt the tension. The enemy was strong. The mission was dangerous. But something else was also present. Determination. Because now many of them had experienced fighting beside humans. And they had learned something important. Battles did not feel the same anymore. When humans were there, no one felt alone in war. And the galaxy was slowly beginning to understand the true strength of humanity. The rescue fleet traveled through deep space for many hours. The destination was a quiet star system called Valor. It was not famous. It was not powerful. But millions of civilians lived there. Families, workers, children. And now the enemy was coming. Scanners confirmed it. A large invasion force from the Karth Dominion was moving toward the system. If the fleet arrived too late, Valaris would fall. No one wanted that. The coalition rescue fleet was not very large. Several alien cruisers, a few defense carriers, support ships, and a group of human vessels traveling near the front. As they approached the system, tension grew across every ship. Commanders studied the tactical screens. Enemy ships were already entering the outer system. Time was running out. The human fleet leader sent a message across all channels. Primary mission: protect civilians, not territory. That message surprised some alien officers. Most wars focused on defending locations, but humans were focusing on people. It was a small difference, but an important one. When the fleet arrived, they saw the situation clearly. Civilian transports were trying to escape the planet, but the enemy had already begun surrounding the system. Enemy ships blocked several routes. If the coalition fleet did nothing, thousands of transports would be trapped. The battle had to begin immediately. Orders spread quickly across the fleet. Defensive lines formed. Fighter squadrons launched. Rescue operations began. The battle for Valaris had started. The first phase was chaotic. Enemy ships attacked aggressively. They tried to break through the coalition lines and reach the planet. Explosions lit up the darkness of space. Several coalition ships took damage early in the fight. But something was different compared to earlier wars. Instead of focusing only on attacking the enemy, many ships were protecting evacuation routes. Human vessels moved near civilian transports. They escorted them through dangerous areas. Again and again, alien commanders noticed this, and soon they began doing the same. A group of civilian ships suddenly lost engine power while trying to leave the planet's orbit. They began drifting. Enemy fighters quickly changed direction toward them. The situation looked hopeless. Then a human carrier launched its fighters at maximum speed. They reached the transports just in time. A defensive wall formed between the civilians and the enemy. The fight was intense. Several fighters were damaged, but the transports escaped. Across the fleet, many pilots saw what happened, and something changed inside them again. They were not just fighting a battle. They were saving lives. Meanwhile, the enemy commander realized something important. The coalition fleet was not behaving like normal defensive forces. They were not retreating. They were not focusing on survival. They were focusing on protecting others. This made the battle harder for the enemy, because every time they tried to push forward, another group of ships moved to block them. And many of those ships were human. Again and again, hours passed. The battle became larger and more intense. More coalition ships arrived from nearby systems after hearing the distress signal. Some had never fought beside humans before, but once they entered the battlefield, they quickly understood what was happening. Human ships were guiding evacuation routes, protecting weaker vessels, holding dangerous positions longer than expected, without being ordered, created a strange effect across the battlefield. Other species began copying the behavior. The entire fleet started acting like one unit, not separate groups, one force. Then the enemy made a major move. A massive Karth battleship entered the center of the battlefield. It was huge, larger than most coalition ships. Its weapons were powerful enough to destroy several ships at once. Its goal was clear: break the defense line. If it succeeded, the evacuation would collapse. Fear spread quickly across nearby ships. Many knew how dangerous that type of vessel was. But before panic could spread too far, a human cruiser moved forward. Then another. Then another. Soon, several human ships were moving directly toward the battleship. Alien commanders watched in shock. They knew the risk. The human ships were smaller. They could be destroyed. But the humans continued moving forward. Without hesitation, the human fleet leader sent another message. Short, simple. We hold the line here. And they did. The human ships focused all firepower on the enemy battleship. They moved carefully, blocking its path, forcing it to slow down. Meanwhile, coalition ships around them began assisting. Alien cruisers joined the attack. Fighter wings from many species entered the fight. The battlefield turned into a massive combined assault. The battleship was strong, but it was now surrounded. After a long and intense fight, the shields failed. Moments later, the giant vessel was forced to retreat. A huge moment in the battle. That single moment changed everything. Across the system, coalition ships pushed forward with renewed energy. Enemy forces began losing coordination. Their advance slowed. Evacuation transports continued escaping the planet. Thousands, then tens of thousands. Life after life saved, because the defense line held, because the fleet fought together. By the end of the battle, the enemy fleet finally withdrew from Valaris. They had not expected such resistance, especially from a rescue fleet. Across the system, messages of relief spread quickly. Civilians were safe. The planet survived. But something even more important had happened. Alien commanders had seen the truth with their own eyes. Humans were not just brave. They changed how wars were fought. They made others fight differently, stronger, together. And the story of Valaris began spreading across the galaxy. Soon everyone would hear about it, and many would start saying the same thing. Standing beside humans in war was an honor. After the Battle of Valaris, the war did not end immediately. But something inside the galaxy had changed forever. News of the battle spread across star systems faster than any official message. Pilots shared recordings. Commanders wrote reports. Civilians told stories to each other. Again and again, the same idea appeared in those stories. Humans had stood in the most dangerous place and refused to move, and because of that, millions of lives were saved. Across the fleets of the galaxy, soldiers began talking about humans in a new way. Before the war, many species had seen humans as inexperienced, too emotional, too bold, too willing to take risks. But now they understood something important. Humans were not reckless. They simply believed something different. They believed no one should face war alone. That idea slowly spread through the fleets, and it began changing everything. Weeks after Valaris, the Karth Dominion launched another large offensive. This time, their goal was even bigger. They wanted to break the central defense lines of the galaxy. If they succeeded, many major worlds would be exposed. The coalition knew this battle would be one of the most important of the war. Every available fleet was called. Ships arrived from many systems. Some were heavily armed warships. Others were older defense vessels. Some fleets had never fought together before. But this time, the atmosphere was different from earlier in the war. Instead of fear, there was determination. Commanders met to prepare the final defense strategy. Maps of the battlefield filled the command halls. Enemy movements were analyzed carefully. Positions were assigned. But during the meeting, one interesting idea appeared. Instead of grouping ships by species, they decided to mix the fleets again. Human ships with alien ships. Different species working side by side. This decision was not forced. It was chosen, because many commanders had already seen how effective mixed fleets could be, especially when humans were involved. As the fleets moved into position, something unexpected happened. Several alien commanders requested to be placed near human formations, not because they wanted protection, but because they trusted them. That trust had not existed at the beginning of the war. It had been built slowly. Battle after battle, moment after moment, and now it was real. When the enemy fleet finally arrived, the scale of the battle shocked everyone. It was massive. Thousands of ships on both sides. Weapons systems lighting up the darkness of space. Fighter wings moving like storms between the fleets. It was one of the largest battles the galaxy had ever seen, and everyone knew the outcome could decide the future. The Karth fleet attacked aggressively. They wanted to break the defense line quickly. Heavy warships moved forward. Long-range weapons fired across the battlefield. Several coalition ships took damage early. But something important was different now. The defense line did not collapse. Ships held their positions. Support vessels moved quickly to assist damaged allies. Fighter squadrons coordinated across multiple species. Communication was fast and clear, and in many key positions of the battlefield, human ships were standing beside alien ones. During one intense moment of the battle, a large section of the coalition line was nearly broken. Enemy forces pushed hard through that area. Several ships were forced to fall back. For a moment, it looked like the defense might fail. But then something happened that no one had planned. Ships from multiple species moved forward together. Without waiting for orders, without hesitation, they filled the gap in the line. Among them were human ships, but they were not alone. Alien ships had joined them instantly, because by now many soldiers had learned something. If someone stands beside you in battle, you stand beside them too. The fighting continued for many hours. Losses happened on both sides, but the defense line remained strong. And slowly, the enemy began losing momentum. Their formations became less organized. Their attacks slowed down. Coalition fleets started pushing forward carefully, working together, protecting each other, just like they had learned from earlier battles. At one point, an alien commander sent a message across the fleet network. It was not an order. It was simply a statement. Today, we fight like humans. Many soldiers heard that message, and many smiled, because they understood what it meant. It meant loyalty, courage, standing together no matter what. Eventually, the battle reached its turning point. Coalition forces launched a coordinated counterattack. Ships from many species moved as one large formation. Human commanders worked together with alien leaders. Strategies were shared quickly. Positions adjusted in real time. The attack was powerful, and this time the enemy could not stop it. The Karth fleet began retreating, slowly at first, then faster, until finally they withdrew from the battlefield. The largest enemy offensive had failed. When the battle ended, the galaxy realized something important. The war was finally turning in their favor, not because one species was stronger, but because the galaxy had learned how to fight together. And that lesson had come from humans. After the war eventually ended, leaders from many civilizations met again. But this meeting felt very different from the first one long ago. There was no fear, no arguments, only respect. They decided to create something new, a symbol that would remind the galaxy of what they had learned. A special honor, not for the strongest soldier, not for the most victories, but for something greater, for those who had stood beside others in the hardest battles. The name of the honor was simple, the Medal of Unity, but among soldiers across the stars, it became known by another name, the Human Honor, because everyone who had fought beside humans in war knew the truth. Standing beside them changed you. It made you braver, stronger, more loyal, and from that day forward, many soldiers across the galaxy began saying the same thing. Not with fear, not with doubt, but with pride. The greatest honor in war was standing beside humans.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more content like this. We'll see you in the next one.